have such a pleasure today to have the PEAR team with us. Many of you probably remember Dr. Noam and Kristen and Don from the PEAR team that were with us in Jacksonville. This is a follow-up to the design session that was held in Jacksonville / these guys are never still, like they're moving forward. So a good chunk of the time will be spent on what's next. As you know, in Jacksonville, we spent longer with the problem, and who better to spend longer with the problems of measurement than Dr. Noam and Kristen Lewis-Warner. So in that same theme, ideate, innovate, implement, we're going to start off with a really, really hard question for Dr. Noam, who is the CEO and founder of PEAR, which is Partnerships in Education and Resilience. He recently concluded a vacation in Mongolia and lived in yurts. And we just want to know, really, Dr. Noam, how does that tie to data? So here's your question. Connect data to your trip to Mongolia, please.
Well, what if thank you so much for having us, and thank you for this introductory question. What if I say nothing? In fact, it was so great that it has no relationship.
You didn't even think about that, right?
Yeah, that's of course not true. I mean, right.
No. Okay.
I mean, this was as remote as it could be. This was a group of friends, and we ventured out. We wanted to do this for the last 3 or 4 years, but couldn't because of COVID. We ventured out from the capital of Mongolia, which I have to admit, I'm pretty good at geography, but I actually didn't know the name, Ulaanbaatar. And from there, we took a plane 2 hours to the west, to the Chinese, Russian, and Kazakhstan border. And from there, we were 6 hours in a kind of Russian-built truck that brought us to the mountain range, which is called the Altai Mountains. Gorgeous, high peaks, glaciers, and we lived for 10 days in tents and on horses, actually. So, I'm not the best, most amazing rider, but I got better and better. But, everything hurt. After 6 hours of being on a horse, I can tell you want to go home, but you can't because you're kind of in the wilderness. So it was a really wonderful outward bound experience, truly gorgeous landscapes, and no data because there was no connection, no internet connection, no cell phones. So we were really out in the wilderness. So that, I don't think this trip had to be evaluated, like our work has to be evaluated.
No surveys? What?
No surveys.
Oh my goodness.
That's just the experience. But I do recommend for everyone at some point, it's really, once you're there, it's really very relatively inexpensive to do this. And, it is very remote. So I was happy to have done it. So here I am back in one piece.
Wow. Congratulations. That sounds like an amazing adventure. And we would expect no less than that from you with your 200 books, articles, etc. on all things STEM and your focus on resilience, persistence, and quality assessment, right? Like you had all of those things and more in that adventure. So
it was definitely an after school experience.
Yeah, it was OST on steroids.
Definitely OST, and I kind of felt because we've done a lot of work with Outward Bound, and I just thought, oh, okay, it's one thing to study it and to write about it; it's another thing to actually do it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm proud of you. Okay, so Kristen Lewis-Warner has a master's degree in psychology. She's worked for more than 20 years in STEM realm, STEM partnerships, all those sorts of things, and she does that work for PEAR. And our stumper question for you, you're also launching 2 young men. So what does launching 2 young men have to do with data?
Oh, I love this question. As a working mom, I love that intersection. I would say for me, And probably to their dismay is how I'm constantly bringing knowledge and information from my job and from the field that I work in to them constantly with, hey guys, cool information, or hey, and they're like, Mom, enough with the STEM and this and that. But I'm constantly talking about my work. I love that because I'm passionate about it. I love data. I love findings. I love research. I love evaluation. So I think that's the intersection as I launch my 18-year-old for this first year going into college, and my son who turned 17 yesterday. So they are constantly hearing about their mom in STEM and their dad who is in pharmaceuticals and a chemist in STEM. And they said, enough talking about STEM.
We're done, Mom. That's it. So thank you.
They'll just become English majors, just out of protest.
Trust me, Kristen. It's true. It's
yes.
true.
We have economics,
became lawyers,
psychology right now is where we're and physical therapy for the other one. So we'll see. Maybe we'll dabble.
So all of that to say, these are two perfect people to help us really take the next steps in measurement, which time and time again, when we survey ecosystem leaders, they say, this is the number one thing that we want to know more about. So I know part of your time, you're going to help us take the next steps from the design session. Part of it, hopefully we're going to hear something about these cool 5 new PD certifications, a little bit about DNA narrative, like all the things, you're going to get it all right here. So don't touch that dial. And with that, we will turn it over to Kristen, I believe. If you have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll get them to Kristen and Gil.
Yeah, so Gil, I'm going to have you kick us off. Obviously, we just have this meaningful measurement. You know, we're supporting back off of the work that we did in Jacksonville. We're super excited to be here. And I'm going to have Gil launch us off. He was present with you all in Florida, along with the partners. So it's amazing. So I'm going to kind of have Gil kick us off, and then I'll jump back in afterward.
Yeah. I also just, as a context, that we can't assume that everyone who's on the call was in Jacksonville and was in the session. I mean, it's great if you were, but if you weren't, you will still get kind of the main information. So PEAR, Partnerships in Education and Resiliency, used to be, and it says here at Harvard and Mass General Brigham McLean, which is actually one of the biggest health systems in Massachusetts, that consists of a merger between Mass General Hospital, Brigham, and other hospitals, including McLean. Just a short note on McLean. McLean was just voted yesterday, it became known on the 1st of August, so 2 days ago, that it is actually considered the best psychiatric hospital in the US, which is a big deal because it is a freestanding hospital. It is connected to Harvard, but it is really not the same as, let's say, a big hospital like Manning or Johns Hopkins and so on, that all have big hospitals. McLean is freestanding, and so the fact that it got voted that is a big reason to celebrate. So that's where we incubated from, and then 2 years ago we became our own independent organization. I continue to be at Harvard and McLean, and we have a research team there to kind of start new things and create new things. But PEAR's main role is to take what we've developed and what other people have developed and spread it as fast as possible, and really be in the service of lots of organizations like yours, lots of partnerships, in order to really strengthen the practice and policy field through strong basic and applied research. So you can see here we're in 50 states now. That's just another reason to celebrate, because we had 49. And we're always complaining about North Dakota, that we didn't have any business there. But 2 days ago, we did some work there with them, some training. So now we are really in 50 states. We have an international presence that is growing quite fast. And just so you know, which is another topic, as part of my work, I am organizing kind of a group that is creating an international association for what's called extended education. So this is actually making also the international work very important, and you'll hear more about it because you can join if you're interested, and it doesn't cost anything. We're in many schools, many out-of-school time programs, and the surveys that we created are now kind of have reached more than 300,000 students, and every year it's growing kind of very, very fast. And that's really important because that gives us a chance to always compare data if we work with you, for example, and say, well, other programs or other after-school associations or other schools have a certain set of results, and we can always compare and contrast your results with other settings. Okay. This can be done really fast. PEAR sees itself as a kind of the solutions people, kind of the people who are not just working on one thing. We're not an evaluation firm that does evaluation only. We're really interested in this clockwise relationship between assessment, PD, and training that comes out of the assessment that's supposed to then influence also the results, programs and practices, and evaluation. Today, we're staying on the left side, the two quadrants on the left, assessment and evaluation. At the end, as mentioned before by Exanne and by Kristen, we will return to the question of training and PD as it relates to some of this. But right now, the bulk of this work right now is on assessment and evaluation. And one thing I would like to say, because I'm handing this over to Kristen right now, is that we have really become clear. It's taking us a long time to kind of do things, try them. And it all started really with a case study with Tulsa. And at that point, we worked with Exanne in her, role as the Tulsa manager, coordinator, director, the regional STEM Alliance. We really did a very in-depth evaluation and case study that got us started. And we wanted to really create something where you can enter kind of on-ramps at different levels of intensity and cost. And today we're going to present to you 3 different on-ramps. And our hope is really that we have made this a possibility also through reasonable pricing, that we can work with each of you in a way that makes it kind of simple, clear, focused, targeted, and with tied to products that you can use for your fundraising, for your communication with boards. We use in this data 3 different assessment systems, and we're actually working on a 4th one. And we call this kind of triangulation because we believe that you just can't just work with one perspective. You need 3 and really 4. The 3 perspectives here are, if you start on the top, the youth perspective. Kind of what do the young people tell us when they go through our programs, our schools, our companies? What is their experience and what is their self-perceived skill increase? Second one on the right, because I'm going clockwise again, is the educator perspective. What do they think is happening? Do they see growth in the students? And do they see growth in themselves? Because it's supposed to be enticing, positive, productive for them as adults in terms of their adult learning and their adult well-being. And then finally, on the left side, left bottom side, is the famous, hopefully not infamous, DOS system, which is a quality system that NSF helped us create, which is observation. What's really happening on the ground? What's the interaction between the facilitators, the teachers, and the students? And what's the learning? Where do we see the learning? The 12 dimensions, Kristen will talk about this. So this is like, for us, the ideal, kind of all 3 levels, but you don't have to sign up for all 3. If it's too hard to do the observations, you can also just do the connection between youth and educator. I mentioned that there should be 4, and there are 4, and we're working on that. And that 4th is really the skill the skills that young people learn in STEM and SEL, SED, and how can we actually track that so that it's not only that they perceive they've changed and that we can see something that's happening, but really that they can solve certain things that they couldn't solve before. So these are called performance measures, and we're trying to work with partners. One of them is the Concord Consortium through a study with STEM Next and Tumblehome, which is a publisher. We're trying to figure out whether you can build into the activities some way in which you know that the young people are actually making progress, so we don't have to use traditional test methods. But stay tuned on that one. The only other innovation that I want to mention to you because we're continuously innovating, so we are now integrating into the self-report and the educator report qualitative questions as well. And we are beginning to use AI, just very much in the beginning, to code some of that, so that you can actually have young people and their educators be able to, not only rate themselves, but say, here's how I see it, here's some examples. And then at this point, we do it kind of, as people who rate. But over time, I've begun to do this in a study with one of our research assistants. It was quite dramatic how the AI system, with some help, was able to judge kind of what young people are telling us. So those are the innovations. So we will continue to kind of make sure that we stay, at the forefront, and that when you work with us, you're the beneficiaries of some of the R&D that PEAR does.
Cool. Great. So yeah, obviously Gil gave a kind of a high level review of our tools, and we'll keep repeatedly saying this as we're going through. We are always available to help kind of talk through more details about the tools that we have available. And as Gil had highlighted here, these tools can be used independently. They can be used in symphony together, but they all go into our interactive data dashboard. So as we talk through the different options that we have, we'll talk about where that dashboard visualization comes in as well. But for our team, when we came into Jacksonville, it was really about talking about what we have as services, but also what we can do best to map and work with you guys as partners. We know each ecosystem is unique. So we want to talk about kind of the different offerings that we have and how our partners use the data, use our reports, because it can really be about talking about impact. It can be talking about guiding continuous improvement. It could be for reporting to key stakeholders, grant writing, policy work. Each need is unique. So one of the best parts about working for PEAR is being able to partner and talk to partners. Oftentimes, Exane and I will meet with ecosystems and kind of walk through hand in glove what needs to happen and how we can best meet those needs. So wanted to kind of, go through what we have as offerings right now. And we'll call out a couple different options, for here we go for just putting your toe in the water for data collection. How does that best match your needs? Or for people who might be a little bit more seasoned and ready to dive in a little bit deeper, we'll talk about that as well. So I'm going to, kind of channel probably my best, Price is Right of door option 1, 2, and 3, and talk through those and what these kind of engagement levels kind of look like as we go forward. So let's talk a little bit about kind of a first kind of light engagement. So I've had the pleasure of being with PEAR for over 7 years at this time, and each partner we walk through can maybe need this side of the spectrum over to this side of the spectrum. So we kind of have these options. So we'll call the first one light engagement. So as you can see here, this is really going to be people who are starting to get into data collection, may have done a little bit, but they're new. They might want to just use one of our tools. They might want to use all of them. We map what the needs are, and then we go from there. But this is a great way for an ecosystem who might be new or might want to do a lower scale in terms of a smaller scale for collection. But you'll see here, this is where you'll get access to our tools, our validated and reliable tools like Gil just reviewed. You'll get administrative supports and technical assistance as well. And then you'll have access to the data dashboard that we just made reference to. It is a really great interactive live system where data is collected as well as visualized, and a secure method for having your data put together and safely managed and visualized. You'll see here that typically, and again, it's on a sliding scale, but baseline cost will usually be around $3,000, less if it's a smaller scale collection, maybe more if it's a larger scale collection. We walk through that as part of the process, but we really do try to make this very user-friendly and cost-effective for partners. Before coming to PEAR, I worked as an independent evaluator, and these costs are very different than what those used to be. So I think that's the lovely part about PEAR, is kind of having that comprehensive approach. It's not one and done. It really is about, let's work together. Let's map what your needs are. Let's get you that, the tools. Let's get you the data. Then let's learn from there, but make it cost effective and useful as well. So let's talk about ecosystems that might be a little bit more ready and dive into what might be kind of a deeper or a medium engagement, I should say. So in this one, you'll see this is more for an ecosystem that might have collected a little bit of data themselves, may have, multiple programs they're looking to do, might have a grant that they want to do, that they have, 5, 10 programs, what have you. We'll walk through it, but maybe a little bit more ready for data collection, and also in need of maybe a little bit more statistical analysis as well as a deliverable. When it comes to kind of that lighter engagement, you're going to get the tools and you're going to be able to get a dashboard. But with this, you're also going to have a deliverable that you're going to be able to share with partners, key stakeholders. It could be an infographic, as you can see here on the screen, or we also have statistical analysis reports, depending on level and length that we need as well. But you'll see, again, that is really for ecosystems that might want to dive a little bit deeper, but you're also going to have that deliverable to be able to share out. You'll see here, base cost is about $5,000 again for this one. We try to make it user-friendly. We try to make it cost-effective in mapping what your needs are as well. So we're in, door 2 at this point, and then we're going to go on to door 3 as an option as well. So this is really kind of looking at beyond the infographics or beyond the statistical reports. This is our deeper dive data narratives for action. This is a deep engagement that we have with partners who are ready to do a deeper dive and probably have staff that are able to be working with our evaluation team a little bit more hand in hand. So it's going to be, as you can see here, more in-depth technical support meetings with our evaluation team and our experts to help do decision making around data. Also, very client-centered reports, deeper statistical analysis reports, really talking about the background about programs, impact, next steps. And this is typically around a year plus in terms of an engagement. And that is just in the sense of doing data collection, maybe multiple times, and being able to write this comprehensive report. This is also part of having a distribution and a marketing plan that our team helps you do. So it's going to be, how do you put this out on social media? How might you share this with your key stakeholders? If you have a social media campaign, how do you get this information out there as well? But you'll see here visually that this report has all of our tools in it. So often partners who are ready to do a DNA report, do the common instrument suite, do the educator survey, and oftentimes do the DOS observations as well, if possible. But it's usually using more triangulation of the tools, where the other options could be maybe just student survey and the dashboarding for that light engagement, or maybe working your way up as you go. So again, the baseline cost for this one, probably about $15,000. But then again, that really kind of working hand in hand with our team, where our team holds the lift of the evaluation work, but you as ecosystems are able to really lift up what you want to bring forward in your reports. We want to make these user-friendly. We want to make them very relevant to you in telling the unique story of your ecosystem. Before I go to the next slide, Gil, anything you want to highlight about the different offerings that we have?
Yeah, thank you for letting me do that. I mean, first of all, you've said it all, so and really comprehensive and clear. So I don't think we've been ever as clear what these 3 offerings really are. In that clarity, just to push it one step further, the first offering, I would say, is really primarily for you as an ecosystem to communicate with all your partners, because you can actually compare and contrast different, parts of the ecosystem. You can you can also bring it to meetings with funders, and they will be impressed, because our sense most of the time is that you can really have two data points that are critical. One is early on in the program. The turnaround is really important. Our turnaround is super fast. So you should know, if you collect data in the beginning of the program, within a day or two, you need to know what the students are telling you. Where are they strong? Where are they less strong? What are they looking for? What are the educators saying, etc. Then at the end, and you don't have to do both, but you can also just do at the end a pre-post or retrospective pre-post, where you really get the change that the students and educators are telling you have occurred. That is, of course, very important for funders and for the morale of your ecosystems, because most of the time, our experience is that these results are positive. That it's not that we're not the bearers of bad news, but that actually the students really do appreciate and see change and report change. So that's the first one. And the platform is very important for that. So we built that platform with Noyce Foundation supports in the millions. I mean, it was really it was very expensive to get there. But we now have that. And so because we have that, we can actually graph it. The second report is for more sophisticated audiences, and you really have more sophisticated audiences these days, where a funder will say, well, okay, so you're telling me that there's change, but how do I know it's really statistically relevant change? I mean, is it beyond chance? I mean, just that you would expect some positive findings anyway in every sample. So that really gives you a kind of much stronger footing and a much stronger ability to say to funders and to your own teams and to boards and to the school districts, look, we're talking business here. This isn't just like a lofty kind of thing. We really did some of the statistical analysis. These are often more rigorous than the typical evaluation reports you get in the evaluation world, because the data inputs are importantly kind of with psychometrically proven assessments. And a lot of evaluators don't have the funds, to just do that. I mean, we had years to be able to do it. So you have both psychometrically proven methods. We have comparisons. We have ways to compare your data to the data inputs from, as I said before, 300,000 kids, and all that for a really reasonable amount of money. And then the third one is, I think, more like you send that to a program officer or to someone like in your state legislature, and you have an executive report, executive page, but it looks much more sophisticated and you can tell your story. And we're really interested in the storytelling of data. And that, I think, is really the integration. And again, $15,000, typically, like, what's the difference between that and, let's say, a $50,000 evaluation? And I think the difference is mostly the qualitative data around, having interviewed people and then having synthesized the interviews. That we don't include there. We like to work with evaluators if you have them, so they can let us do the quantitative work. But as I mentioned earlier, we are pulling in qualitative data by allowing kind of young people and educators, and if you want, also parents, we want to get their kind of first person accounts and then kind of pull those in as examples. So I think the difference gets smaller and smaller. And I think that our approach, I don't want to toot our horn and I don't want to be in competition with evaluators, because we are also evaluators and we like to work with evaluators. But I think that from a financial point of view, there's no way that a typical evaluator, without having that whole infrastructure, can do this without doubling the cost. So I think that is a real strength of this approach. And I think it's innovative. We're learning, and we want to find the right cost point. I mean, so that we don't go broke doing this, but we also don't have to become rich doing it, but somehow finding the right middle ground so that evaluation really is cost effective and can be affordable for every ecosystem.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point that I'm not sure if it came through when I was doing a review about that dashboarding and access to the tools and then what these deliverables can do. I think the beauty of what I hear from partners often is it's great to get these deliverables, you know, when it comes to the, you know, the endpoint or where people are maybe wrapping or thinking about multiple year, but that dashboard is live and user-friendly and something that programs are also able to go into and use day to day. And it's, you know, as students are doing collection, you'll see those numbers change, you'll see those graphs change. So even in the interim, while you're waiting to have all that data collection happen and get a report at the end, you're also going to be able to work with that dashboard in real time because it's live. So we really try to do the two to complement each other. And again, I think we talked about kind of the staircases of as we're going up in terms of what the offerings have and then what you take away. But I do love the fact that the dashboard itself as an anchor is always available to partners. You get Qualtrics accounts that you can go into and use yourselves, and technical support from our team. So we're happy to walk you through that as well. I think
And,
the other,
Kristen,
yes, go, no, go Gil.
No, I just want to say that in terms of this more expensive, this I like this latter idea. Like we are happy to help you, you know, gather information or come to a meeting if you need to fundraise, because probably many of you, even for $15,000, you don't just have that sitting in a bank. So we would want to help you. Kind of, we can't give you the money, and Ties has been wonderful because it has paid half of that amount up to now. But Ties also has limited budget. So I think this might be an ideal ask to a kind of local foundation, and we would kind of help you make that argument.
Absolutely. And Xan and I have also had many meetings in addition to ecosystems that we've talked through to help think about what Gil is saying. Not only what do they have as data needs, but also how do they go about getting funding to support this work? So I think Gil also gave a great lead into kind of this last offering that we kind of call as custom engagement. And that really goes into that deeper dive that we talked about of adding that qualitative piece as well. So this is really around, the importance of meeting with partners and hearing their needs. So the Tulsa case study, which Xan being right here with us is perfect to kind of chime in and talk about her experiences with it, is a great example of a custom request that we had. So this, in terms of an engagement, was bringing a lot of background information from the Tulsa ecosystem, who had done multiple years of data collection. They had lots of archival information to report on for their amazing ecosystem as well. And then we also added that qualitative piece and really explored partnerships. So this is one of those deeper dive year plus type of engagements that we did together to tell kind of a very comprehensive report that actually ultimately turned into a publication in a peer-reviewed journal. But wanted to kind of tag Xan to kind of chime in and share, because she right here with us is one of our custom people who kind of walked through it with us as team.
Yeah, just mad props to the PEAR team. They are just as kind and just as supportive almost 10 years in the relationship in Tulsa as they are right now on this webinar. So you won't find a better partner than the PEAR team. And wow, does it ever speak volumes when your report has Harvard Medical School attached to it like that. That always makes everyone's chin drop. I love the question. Someone once is like, the one in Boston? I was like, yes, the one in Boston, like there's not another one. So I can cook up some kind of pre-post for myself, and it's just not the same as having these level of, 2-3 decades of work in this field to support what you're doing. And it was a wonderful time for us. It was like having our family all in, because they did focus groups, they did interviews, and you really got to rehearse all the stories, of the beginning of the ecosystem, where we had been, where we wanted to go, all with all of our partners, and then have their expertise on, okay, and this is what they're saying, and this is what the data is saying, and really inform our decisions as we move forward. So I am a huge fan of this team and of the power of having them look at your data with you and help you tell that story. All of us in our hearts know the story, we know our own story, and we know that it's working, and they can help you put the numbers to it to really tell that story in a compelling way.
Thanks, Hexanne. Yeah, so we're going to turn back over to Gil to talk a little bit about those PD options that we had talked about. Erica, I see your question in terms of kind of supports for grant writing. I just sent it to you. Like, let's have a conversation about what you need. That's another part that PEAR likes to do when people are doing grant writing. Like, we will give you, kind of the background to help kind of on that data piece. So feel free in the upcoming slides, it will be my contact information, or you can kind of have Hexanne connect us as well. But happy to talk through how we can support you in that. And I think that the only other nod I would want to do about the Tulsa custom kind of work that we did is not only was it this great report that their internal team was able to get, we went forward and we did a publication, so they had that in their wheelhouse as well, but also working with Hexanne and her team, we created one-pagers that helped to summarize. So when you needed that quick kind of share it out fast, somebody can't go into the depth of the report, but you want to have a one-pager or two-pager summarizing, that was there as well. So we really are all about working with making it real and usable for what your ecosystem needs in your unique story. So Gil,
before we go on, if you write grants and you need an evaluator written into the grant, we typically then, if we can do this work and if it fits also what we have available, then, which typically it does, then we write those pages that have to do with the evaluation report, and also price this at that point when it's really kind of for a grant with a really more specialized form of evaluation. Those budgets are always different, but we do, and Dawn has done a lot of those kind of extra pieces of grant writing when it's really helpful. But we need to talk about this. I just want to, one issue is, just want to be sure that there's no misunderstanding when we have these steps. Maybe it's clear to you, and it says 3,000, 5,000, 15,000. That doesn't mean 3,000 plus 5,000 plus 15,000. That means that, just to be really clear, that if you go to the second level, that 5,000 includes 3,000. So it's not an additional 5,000. It's a, like each, and if you go to the 15,000, that incorporates the first and the second level.
Exactly. Thank you. Good clarifying.
I also wonder, before we go on, I mean, whether there are any questions, comments, I mean, including kind of your observations, what you need. It would be nice if this would be a dialogue, even for 5 minutes, and then we go to the next part of the program. Is that okay, Kristen?
Oh, I think that's great. I think there's time carved at the end, but I love this as an intersection point because we're going to be shifting over to kind of to the PD side. Mm-hmm. So if there are questions related, and I've answered a couple in the chat as well, but if there's anybody who has like a specific question you want to ask, please do. And you'll see as we go forward, we have a slide of ecosystems that we have worked with. So I feel like they're good proof points to reach out to as peers as well. But yeah, Gil, I think it's a perfect time for people to maybe chime in if they're ready.
Okay, so any questions at this point for Dr. Noem or Kristen? They're ready to take those questions.
Yeah, or even comments. Are we on the right track? Does this respond to some of the needs you have? Are there some things that you think we're overlooking that are important for you?
Oh, Lori has her hand raised. Go ahead, Lori.
Is she off mute? Yes, nice.
All right, thank you for unmuting me. The question I have is a lot of the experiences that we have in our work, we're not the direct providers, and there are oftentimes engagement levels where the students are there for just a portion of a day or a full day, not ongoing day in, day out, for an extended period of time. Are there tools or ways to modify the surveys in order to be able to use those in those types of situations, or would you really have to have many of those longer engagement events in order to have data that would be feasible for this service?
I mean, I can
Yeah,
start that. I mean, and actually Molly is here from the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, because that became, in our work with them in the past, that was a big issue, because many of the students that are brought to the program were there for a day. Many of them come for a day. And so the question was, can we actually, use some of the instruments? And the answer was yes. You can have a retrospective instrument asking the students, what was it like before you came? What is it like at the end of this day? And you kind of modify some of the questions because they should be based on the short-term experience they had. But the idea is that, you spend all this money to bring the kids to the program, that even a day makes a difference. And we also use the DOS, the observation tool, to see how engaged the kids were. Do they have a voice? Is it relevant to them? So you can do it. We did a lot of dosage research and found that, the ideal, point of dosage often for programs is around 4 to 5 days. That, if you do it much longer, you don't have as extreme results, or not as strong results as you have. But you definitely have more results when you do something for, let's say, a week compared to a day. But those are, you probably have multiple programs in your ecosystem, so you can actually start comparing and contrasting dosage. But you can definitely do things just for a short while.
Yeah, and I think the only thing, Lori, I would add as well is that when it comes to the common instrument for students, happy to share information around the different options in terms of administration style, as Gil spoke to, as well as length. So we know that different programs have different kind of abilities to be able to have that length for surveys. So what we love to have is this being a common tool, a validated and a reliable tool, but we did want to have available in different options for the length that the program may have. And to your point about not being a direct provider, we have many partners that are in the same instance, so we can kind of talk through how you collaborate with your programs. Exan was the same in terms of they worked with programs when it came to their ecosystem work, and how we can best kind of match that or do data collection and have that open kind of culture of data happening within the programs and how the programs benefit. So you need that buy-in from programs of like, okay, but what's the give get? They will be able to see results that are shared with them as well about impact at their programs.
I think that's all of the questions for now.
Awesome. Thank you. Lori, thank you for your question.
Yeah,
and feel free, everybody else, my contact is at the end, so feel free if questions come later, happy to do that. But I'm going to tag Gil to talk a little bit about our professional development offerings that are very relevant in this time.
So wait, can you do the slide before one more time?
Oh, sure.
So up to now, we do the 2 left quadrants, kind of from assessment to data-informed planning, evaluation, reporting back to the field. But now we want to kind of move over to one side. I mean, we have a whole bunch of things that we developed, but we just want to show you one side of the training and PD. And so let's go there. So when it says here data-informed trainings, the ideal way is to start looking at results, maybe from the past year, and then say, okay, here are some areas where I think PD would make a difference. a very natural place is using DOS. And we're now working on the dimensions of success as a self-report. In fact, we've completed that work and are now kind of starting to roll that out. So you don't have to have an observer who's certified. You can just have as a team, you say, well, how are we doing around issues of planning, program management, interaction, engagement with the students, student voice, relevance, inquiry. So these are kind of some of the 12 dimensions. What we found in our research is that very systematically, there are some areas that are quite challenging for programs and for ecosystems. One is relevance. The other one is student voice, leadership opportunities for students' choice. Another one is inquiry, kind of the why questions in the process of the work. And we're actually taking this from STEM also to other areas of learning. So it's not only STEM. So there we've begun to say, let's really have PD and professional training for the staff in these particular areas. And then we go back and measure it and see, well, does the professional development make a difference in actually increasing the quality in those dimensions? Here, what we're finding is through two sources. One, just experience in the world and in the field, and the other one through looking at the holistic student assessment, or those 4 scales that are part of the CIS, the Common Instrument Suite, where we actually are finding that COVID did make a kind of negative difference in students' well-being. So optimism went down pretty dramatically across the board. Other things didn't go down as much as we thought, but definitely relationships, kind of sense of isolation. So that we found is not only true for children, but also for staff. So out of that came for us a need to actually address that issue. And one of the things we want to offer you, because it is such a big deal and everyone talks about it, but no one quite knows what to do about actually the aftermath of COVID. We all want to forget, we all want to party, we all want to go to Mongolia and other places because finally we can. But there is, I mean, it left scars and they're very noticeable. The suicide rates have gone up a lot, actually. They had gone down over the last decade and they've now gone up a lot. Depression has gone up. Behavior issues in schools have gone up. Attention issues, focus for kids has gone down, meaning has gone up as problems. So we have a kind of, maybe not an avalanche at this point, but definitely a significant increase. So we have developed a number of trainings and want to just let you know about them. And we'd love to work with you. And that could be a work that connects to the data that we talked about earlier, but it can also be done without the data collection. One training, should I do this, Kristen, or do you want to do this, the description?
No, I think perfect for you to do it. We're at about a 9-minute mark, so just want to give you that as a call out as well.
Yeah, so I will do this in the kind of supersonic way. So one training, these are typically the way we do them is three to four training modules. You can choose within them. You don't have to do all 3 or 4, but ideally you do, and they're all like 90 minutes to 120 minutes. So it goes deeper, but you can also just work with us on just an introduction and then see how that works. The first one is developmental resiliency, which really is our answer to the issue that adversity often leads to psychopathology and to clinical issues, but it doesn't have to, because we all have gone through an era of adversity, significant adversity. And yet a lot of people have actually, in a lot of families, have come out somewhat strengthened. The connections are have been built were strong. So what's really the difference between those people who use adversity to build strengths collectively and individually, and what makes other people kind of succumb to the pressures and the adversity? There's a lot of literature by now. It's like 40 years of really good research on resiliency. And our approach is that resiliency isn't just bouncing back, but it really is bouncing forward. It can be that most people who are creative, most of us who kind of work in this area are examples of things we had to work out in our lives or have to work out that aren't easy. And we're kind of building that into kind of the strengths we create. So that's part of, a paradigm shift to where it's like saying, let's embrace, we live in a world of crisis, let's embrace some of that, and let's figure out how to actually build communities that can actually help support young people in strong relationships. The second one is educator mental health. We have a training, that's not 3 of them, but that's one training that really helps educators kind of think about strategies to not burn out, because the burnout rates among educators is dramatic, scary. It leads to lots of teachers leaving the field. It's very hard to be working in this kind of environment that has become so political. So we need to kind of help teachers support their approach to resiliency. The next one is just an overview of student mental health. What are the factors? How can it be assessed? How do you know who is in your population? What are the needs? And what are the ways in which you can actually apply the 3-tier model? 3 tiers meaning everyone has issues. Some people have issues, but they're subclinical, but they're beginning to become a little chronic. And then the people at tier 3 that really have some significant issues that need to be attended to very fast. Finally, or not so finally, building and belonging and assertiveness. These are 2 trainings around really building into your system healthy, supportive issues, ways of addressing children's needs. One is kind of the whole issue of belonging. How do you create settings that are really where young people feel they belong? This is something very important to the Department of Education right now. So we want to kind of build that out. And then the issue of assertiveness, youth voice, agency. Like if you want young people to be healthy and smart, you got to give them a voice. They have to be able to, really speak out and set the norms and create some kind of activities that make them feel not only that they belong, but that they matter. So all that together, you don't have to take all of these courses, but they together really address many issues. We are working with ties to try to see how we can bring this to the leadership of the initiative, but we also want to kind of work with you individually if you're interested.
Thank you, Dr. Noem.
Thanks. I just wanted to say, I know Xan and team have a little housekeeping thing. So of the remaining slides that we have, you will receive this in the slide deck. So you can reach out to learn about PEAR's other professional development offerings, the integration of STEM and SED, or STEM or SED, whichever ones, or mental well-being. There is a slide in here where we call out ecosystem partners that we have been working with, some of them. So those are great proof points of people to reach out to learn more about the collaborations, or reach out to Xan and I to talk through getting a meeting on the schedule. I'm so thrilled that people are already reaching out here, but my contact information is here. So I thank you all for having us, but want to tag Xan because I know you guys need to do some housekeeping items as well.
Yeah, thank you. And Lori just dropped a question as to whether the PD sessions are in person or virtual, Kristen.
They can be both, Gil, right? They're designed to be virtual right now, but they can be in person. Is that correct, Gil? Yeah,
and virtual means in-person virtual, yes. Meaning not asynchronous, kind of not video watching, but with one of our trainers. We have a diverse group of trainers. I think this is, working with you, if you want to introduce us to some of your your networks, this is a very easy and not very costly way of also connecting us, and then we can talk more about the data and learning kind of how we work and what some of the content is. So this might be an easy way. We also travel, but traveling makes it much more expensive because then you have to, the travel cost and it's more powerful for sure, but you have to hotel, by the time you add all this in, it's just more expensive than just what we're doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you all so much. We are so honored that you would take time to help our ecosystem leaders learn about measurement and think together about how they might partner with you to do an even better job of reaching the students that we care so deeply about. On that note, it is back to school time. So this is one of our first back to school webinars, and I'll drop, look at that. Lauren is already on it. There's the professional development certification, and I'll drop the link for the back to school webinar series, and we hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.